All right, it is 1 o'clock. We are here today for an update with Bonner County Historical Museum. With that, we'll turn it over to you and make sure that we use the microphone there. Oh, he's got it there.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Domke, Commissioner Korn. Thank you for the opportunity today to present to you our budget request for 2026. My name is Chuck Lohman, and this is Hannah Combs, the Executive Director for the Bonner County Historical Society and Museum. For your consideration, we've included a pamphlet that outlines who we are, the scope of our activities, our organizational structure, our 5-year strategic plan, and our proposed 2026 budget. At the heart of all that we do is encased in our mission. By caring for Bonner County's historical objects and sharing its stories, we bring our communities together through thoughtful exploration of our past to inspire curiosity and deepen connections for the future. We believe that it's our shared duty to preserve, protect, and perpetuate the cultural and historical artifacts that tell the story of Bonner County. These items serve as a tangible link to those who came before us, and it helps us better understand our past and help us to find common ground as we live and work together now and in the future. This past year for our organization has been a time of reckoning, but also renewal. We were faced with a very real possibility of closing our doors due to deferred maintenance, reduced membership, and a lack of focused fundraising. And so we recognize that urgent need, and we made a lot of changes to our organization. First off, we brought in new board members to refocus our organization on its chartered core values. And then we've taken deliberate steps to rebuild our financial stability. One of those steps was to let go of one of our 3 paid staff members, all of whom are part-time, and then relying more heavily on our dedicated volunteers to achieve that. Part of our broader strategy to strengthening the organization is that we are requesting the county's annual contribution from $25,000 to $46,000. This reflects not only our commitment to organizational reform and long-term sustainability, but it also mirrors the increased support that we are seeking from donors and patrons to ensure the continued preservation of Bonner County's rich history for generations to come. So we're not just asking you to consider giving more, but we are also doing the same from all of our donors and our patrons and sponsors as well. So at this point, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Hannah, who will walk you through the specifics of our historical society, and then we'll remain for any questions that you may have of us.
Before we go there, can I ask you questions on the contributions that you're requesting and the changes?
Sure.
Because I understand the aspect of what it is that you do, but your financial increase is almost, so for you guys to know, it was $25,000 last year. So this was a significant increase.
Correct.
And one of the things that we had as a last year discussion was there's been a decrease in membership. There's increased in cost, which there was a discussion about a reflection of a decrease in interest in the Historical Society and what the county is doing. So can you elaborate on, you have a anticipated $16,000 budget for membership and dues. What was it this past year?
What is the ask this year?
$46,000.
Yeah. Yes, so our the income that we brought in from memberships in 2024 was about $13,000. That was up from about $11,000 the year before. We have done a lapsed membership campaign so far this year. We are doing a new member drive this summer. So we're confident that we are going to be able to get up to that $16,000 figure in membership this year and then sustain that for next year. Although that's a little conservative, we are planning to increase our membership 20% year over year through 2030. But I think we will be able to hold at that $16,000 in 2026.
So we also discussed kind of a not an aggressive approach towards grants. So what was your grants that you took in 2024?
Yeah, grants were limited in 2024. It was about $4,300. And we Actually, in 2025, we did not budget any grants into our budget, just with some of the anticipation of some federal grants going away, and a lot of the sub-grants through the state are from the National Endowment for the Humanities. So I'm glad this year that we limited our grant income in our budget, but next year we are looking at more foundation grants, more local grants that we'll be able to apply for that won't be coming from federal dollars.
Which federal grants did you apply for last year?
So we usually apply to grants through the state, either through the Idaho Humanities Council. They do a community grant, and that is from the National Endowment for the Humanities. And then we also apply for the Idaho State Historical Society's Community Enhancement Grant. And that one, I don't remember the percentage, but a percentage of their funding for that grant comes from, I believe it's the National Endowment for the Humanities as well.
There's two different levels of grants, so we have state and federal. So you guys didn't apply for any federal grants last year?
Not directly, no.
Okay.
If I might add to that. The problem with some of those federal grants is they have so many requirements that it actually takes us away from our organizational mission, creates more work for more staff that we don't have already. So to take on a federal grant would actually end up costing us more money than it's actually worth applying for.
It could end up costing more.
Correct. Because it doesn't, their requirements don't align with the direction of our organization.
Well, yeah, and I would say the administrative burden, our chances of getting a federal grant directly are pretty low just because we are such a small organization. If we were to get one, the administrative time it would take just to do the grant reporting is more than we would be able to manage with our current staff. So there's a probability that we would have to take on a temporary employee to fulfill a federal grant.
Chuck, I don't think I've met you here before. Are you new here? Because Hannah, we've met before.
Correct.
Yeah, so.
Yes, sir. So I was brought in this year as part of the effort to increase our board of trustees and bring in different skill sets.
You're the hired guy.
I'm not hired. I'm volunteer.
And have you guys looked at all at what's happening either statewide, regionally, or nationally with regard to memberships and participation in historical societies and museums to know how the trends you've seen over the last few years compare to trends that are happening both regionally and nationally?
So we have a couple unique challenges. Like, we're different than, say, King County, Washington, right? Because there's such a large population base that it's easy to bring people in and charge a substantial fee to enter the museum and that sort of thing. Whereas smaller and rural museums are moving towards a membership base instead of charging fees for their museums, so that you have a continual source of people invested in the project and contributing annually. So our goal in the next 5 years is to get to around 600 to 1,000 members that would be contributing annually to our projects and to the museum. So
What methods of marketing and outreach are you guys using to try to achieve that? Because I see the value in membership over just admission fees, but it also seems like a somewhat daunting challenge
absolutely.
to achieve.
Yeah, so we do have a pretty good pool of people that we reach out to through a monthly newsletter. We have almost 1,000 people who receive our monthly newsletter. We have more people than that on social media, but we don't really see a lot of crossover between people who are on social media and who actually come in and participate, so I don't consider that a big metric for us. I would say another factor that we've realized in the last year is that we've been giving away a lot of what we do for free. which is great, but at the same time, it doesn't encourage membership if you're already getting everything for free. And so we have been looking at the different services we provide and which ones would be appropriate to charge fees for, and then make those either free or, reduced admission, that type of thing, if you become a member, to help incentivize the membership. Because we do see, we need to grow it, but we do see a good amount of participation in our programs. It's just that we've been offering so many of them for nothing that it hasn't been contributing to our bottom line for the last 5 years or so.
And that was
Sorry.
That was something that we brought up at the last few budgets as we're looking at a program that is not self-sustaining, that's relying on, you're almost doubling what the county ask is. Can we see a list of what you guys have decided, and then maybe a little bit of why didn't you institute some of those fees, or if you did, explain that? Because we brought this up as a concern that, one, we brought forward kind of a comment about the Bonner County rhetoric of were you born here kind of doesn't lend itself to the idea of the history aspect for a lot of the new people, because there is a were you here versus not. And there was a comment about how do we change that rhetoric so that more people care about the history that is Bonner County. But also, if you guys continue to give services away for free, then you're going to continually request that Bonner County taxpayers as a whole uphold it, and that's not sustainable, nor is it something that's really reasonable for what the taxing district is for. And so there was discussion already about you guys implementing fees associated with the people that are using it versus taxing everybody in the county by way of asking the county to hand it to you. So what moves did you make over this past year in line with that? Because when I saw that dollar amount, that was really steep, and it makes me want to know, what did you guys actually change? Because you said you were going to do those things.
Yeah, so one thing, if you look at all of the programs that we do, I've been thinking about them recently in terms of which ones can be managed by our volunteers and which ones can have to be managed by staff. And so, for example, our education programs are either free or low cost, but they're almost entirely coordinated by our volunteers. And so they don't put a lot of pressure on the staff, and therefore aren't using a lot of our payroll dollars to fulfill those programs. On the other hand, our research services are, many of them, especially since we've had so many requests in recent years for property research, which is one of the more difficult types of research we fulfill. Those often require staff to get pulled in to fulfill those. And so we've increased, I think before our research fee was $10 an hour. We've raised that to $25 an hour to cover sort of our staff time. And then we're also tracking that more carefully. So it used to be that someone would come in, they would sit there for 4 hours asking questions, we'd be retrieving documents, and then they'd pay $10 on the way out. So now we are tracking those dollars more carefully. It's also, we have put a discount on that for members so that they have that benefit. If you become a member, then it's more affordable for them. And we also are developing a research scholar program so that different members of the community, if they're really interested and they want to spend a lot of time in our archives, they can come in and be trained, and then they'll have more direct access to the archives instead of needing us to do that research for them. So we've done that with all of our different types of research, and really evaluating how much time those take and how much, what the value is. And then also our photo order services, we've increased those prices about 3 times.
So can you present to the county, and you probably don't have this with you, but from 2023, your research fee of $10, and then when did you shift it to 25 and show the difference in the change of value and how you're tracking that?
Okay.
Because I'm looking at the numbers, and I've seen this one a couple of times.
Yeah.
And we're not trending in a direction that is less dependent on the county. We're going the opposite direction on this grouping, and I think that we need to see where changes were made to show what improvements were made with when they were instituted. Like, when we left after budget season for 2024, did you guys start the increased research fee rate?
We started it in, I believe, September, so a couple of months after I met with the commissioners.
Thank you.
What is your endowment contribution? What is that?
Yeah, so so we do have an endowment fund. We currently have about $16,000 in it. We have been, and the endowment, in theory, someday could provide a significant amount of our operating budget. It's based on the interest that the investments accrue. So our endowment is with the Idaho Community Foundation. We get a 4% return on it each year. So right now, with a $16,000 principal, it's not returning very much. But we are working on some efforts in planned giving with some of our older members to see if they will leave an amount in their wills for us. The $3,000 that I put on the budget is a percentage of the individual contributions we will be seeking next year that would be set aside to add to the principal of the endowment. And that's not on the budget because the planned giving, usually we would receive income from that when someone dies, which we can't plan. So that would be sort of a special additional income that we can't budget for. But we did look at setting aside about $3,000 from our individual contributions to add to the endowment fund for next year, with the idea that that will eventually, the interest will eventually be able to contribute more heavily to our.
So I guess one main question I have is I'm looking at this and then I'm kind of comparing it to what we do here at the county, like in our planning department, for instance, right? The tax dollars pay for the planning department to be there, but if you want to utilize the services, you have to pay a fee. And I'm just looking at your expense lines and I'm seeing youth programming expenses at $5,500, adult programming expenses at $8,100. You mentioned the research. Are those expenses being paid for by the people that are utilizing those services?
It depends. Most of the adult programming is. So if you look in the income under adult programming fees, our anticipated income for adult programs does cover the expenses, and that's usually through ticket sales for different lectures and presentations we put on. Most of the youth programming services we do try to provide for free or at a very reduced rate, just so the schools and homeschools and any individual families with kids can enjoy those for free, and there aren't barriers to who can participate. So we don't charge very much for youth programs at all. And we do either look to funding that through donations, grants, or
So what would youth programming entail? What is that?
yeah, so if you look in the center section of the trifold, we have 4 main youth programs. So we do school tours. We do offer them to all ages, but we primarily focus on 4th grade classes who are studying Idaho history. We have our traveling trunks. So those are kind of contained kits that have hands-on activities. Different teachers or families can check those out, take them home or take them into their classroom, and there are guides there with activities that they can do that are related to Bonner County history. We also have hands-on history. This is a new program since I last met with you. This is targeted at younger kids, so usually 3 to 7 years old, and we do this once a month. They get to, it's basically different types of craft activities and games that they get to play that are themed on local history and kind of are getting them inspired to bring their family back to the museum, to get interested in history. And then we also offer custom curriculum. So we often do this with kind of high school age kids, but we've done it with homeschool families, we've done it with private schools, we've done this with really anyone who's studying a very specific topic and they want to come in and either learn about that or learn how to do research or do any kind of different project than what we offer in the other 3 programs.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around where the $5,500 a year expense comes from those 4 items.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that you're using a lot of your volunteers to do your school tours and such.
Yeah, so the $5,500 is typically in supplies, so things like hands-on history, they're doing activities, same with the traveling trunks, because there are a lot of, tactile objects, there are a lot of supplies, just printing curriculum, printing paper, those kind of costs. So the $5,500 is just the physical supplies that it takes to do those programs for.
So when you're thinking of a rate, then are you not including the operating cost for the program?
We haven't, because I think our feeling.
That's what he was
Yeah,
getting at,
okay.
is that when you're
Yeah.
when you're being asked the question of, does it pay for itself for the people that are using the
Yeah.
service? When you look at the way you wrote expenses, you're showing adult programming cost $8,100, but there are other supplies that look like you're saying are not covered by the cost of what you're charging people for. And so when you're looking at creating a self-sustaining, why are you not including, these are the costs associated with running the youth program? And then when it comes to your custom curriculum, are you charging for creating a custom curriculum?
We haven't. And that is an area that we should probably charge for. I think a lot of this goes back to this sort of legacy we've inherited of always doing education programs for free, which might not make sense anymore. We have kind
It's
of.
not free, though, when you're asked, it's just a shifting.
Yeah.
And I think what Commissioner Corn's questions are directed at is, for the people that are using it, they're not being required to pay, but everybody is being asked to pay.
Right.
And so when you're looking at the program, it costs to sustain it, which is why we're looking at the budget. So is there a reason not to look at the areas that you could be extracting value from for the user base? And so creating a curriculum for 3rd to 12th grade is significant for public school, for homeschool. Is there a reason that wasn't one of the things that was included?
Not exactly. Yeah, we can go back and look at that. We did this year start charging because our school tours can either be led by a docent at the museum or kind of self-guided, where you just come in and get to look around. We've done both for free with no charge for years. This year we did start charging $1 per student for the guided tours, just because those do require more effort and coordination on our end. Our admission for kids is $1, so that seemed to be fair in that regard, but I would say it still at that price is still not covering the costs.
Even if the volunteer isn't charging you, there is a availability of it. There's a facility cost. You have electricity and phones and administrative costs. And so there's a reason to even charge when you have a volunteer that's guiding your tour, to look at that as an option, because at your rate of, if every year you ask for double what you asked for before, it's not sustainable by anybody. And so we have to take a hard look on what is being offered as a free program and what's not a free program, because if I were going to look at what's the 5-year plan, if every year we had to double the county can't afford to do that for the History Museum. And so that's why I'm focusing on what are we charging for, because we talked about this the last two budget cycles, because the interest by way of membership hasn't been going up at the rate that you need it to continue. And you guys recognized that as a group and then looked at what can you do to market to get more interest in, to get more support of it. But I didn't actually expect that to be as big of an increase from the History Museum with not that big of a jump from your interest, because it's not, you have an increased number of members that have pushed your cost up. That's not the push here. It's just the cost of existing has gone up essentially, and that's what you're asking the county to cover. But the interest from Bonner County residents and those who travel through they're not lining up. And that's what my worry is when I look at the income and the expenses, and there are federal grants that take more work, but the reason they take more work is the yield can be much greater. That makes it so that you don't have to look more than once. And so sometimes you can pair with another group that's looking for a similar type of grant and do a block. That's why I was asking on the federal level. And I think I commented on that one the last time we were on grants, because there was a comment of you needed more administrative staff to more aggressively look at grants, but we didn't aggressively look at grants still. And I understand it's a stumbling block because you need people that know how to do that, but.
If I may comment, so just this last year, we did a mailer to 5,000 residents in our community to draw more interest to the museum, to bring people into our Legacy Patron program. And we intend to do that biannually, so every 6 months, we plan to do an aggressive mailing campaign to reach out to residents in our community to draw them to the museum. One of the things we recently did is we did the movie about Bonner County at the Panada, and the Panada was packed for that. And that drew a lot of interest to the museum, to what we provide, but also to Bonner County as a whole. So the issue that we're facing is that these goals that we have are very much a slow grow goal. And prices for materials to fix our roof aren't going down. Prices to run the museum aren't going down. The museum, I encourage you to come visit and look at our infrastructure and see that there's years of abandoned HVAC modules because things have aged out, and instead of taking it out and replacing it properly, they just abandoned it and put a new thing in its place. And last year I was on the roof in December, tried to scale the roof in the snow to address a leak in the roof, which needs to be partially replaced. And so we are doing our level best to revitalize this organization and do the things that you're asking. Hannah and I sat down and reworked a whole fee schedule on the services that we provide. But it's going to take time, one, for those fees to start to accumulate, but then also the number of people that are actually coming in to use those services, I don't think are going to generate the revenue that you're thinking that it's going to generate. And part of the problem is that if you look at the big museums in the big counties and the percentage of people who participate in those versus our museum, it just isn't sustainable in and of itself. And so that's why we're relying on big donors to come in and help us out. Oftentimes those are structured giving, like Hannah's saying, those are people who have passed away. And so we're doing our level best to put our organization in a place financially, but also physically, so that it can show that we are being faithful with the money and the funds that are given to us, so that we can set our organization up for success and achieve its organizational ends. So initially, this may look like a big ask by the museum, but it's only about 2.3% of what you could be raising in levy charges for historical society and historical renovation projects in the county. It's a very small percentage, And we're just asking for your help in the interim as we rework and revamp this organization so that if it comes, we have donors that are working with us to try and get our facilities renovated, but if that stuff falls through, we could easily lose valuable historical items should our roof fail or something to that effect. And I'm a builder. I've been on that roof. I know what needs to be done, and we just don't have the resources to make it happen immediately. And so that's why we're coming to the county asking for an increase to get us over the hump so that as we continue to grow as an organization and become more financially cogent, then we're going to be in a place where we could hopefully reduce or remove that requirement. Sorry.
So can I ask you, are you guys a nonprofit? Are you guys like a 501c3?
We are, yes.
Do you guys have any kind, you said you were lacking in fundraising, foundations, obviously you can do fundraisers, people that donate to your corporation. I am assuming it's a corporation. It's a tax write-off. I have to say personally, I have never seen any advertisement. Facebook is huge, it's free. You're talking about doing 10,000 mailers to try and reach the community. I know that mailers are not cheap. You're gonna spend $7,000, $8,000 just doing that. I personally have to question the expenses that you guys are putting out for the returns on your investment, when there are other avenues that may reach actually more people and at a very minimal or zero cost. I've been here for 28 years myself, and not once that I can recall have I ever seen anything about the Historical Society, or would you like to be involved, or would you like to volunteer, or would you like to donate? And like I said, Facebook is probably the #1 social media outlet.
Yeah. We do have there's one group in particular on Facebook that we have a pretty good relationship with. It's, I think it's called Signs You're a Sandpoint Kid. So that has about 10,000 members, I believe. And it's all, people who grew up here and are kind of sharing photos and memories of their lives in Bonner County. I think it's called Signs You Are a Sandpoint Kid. And so that is.
Does your mailer just go out to Sandpoint area? Is that why maybe?
No, we do. So
Like when you send it out, where does it go? And then do you have a metric of, based on the number that you sent out, how many people became a member because of that mailer so that you could gauge the cost benefit of doing a mailer?
Yeah. Yes. So I think about 18% of people who we mailed to did return a donation from that mailing. Yeah, it's decent.
Dollar amount for what it cost to send the mailer?
It was about $1,200, I think. So I don't think it was 5,000. We sent it out to about 2,000, 1,800 or so. Yeah.
So when you're choosing like where you send it, is it, how are you choosing it if it's not?
Yeah, we have a database that we've been working on for about 30 years, and we do update that regularly. We have, I think it all came from we have about 1,800 people in our database, so we send it out to that group. I'm trying to remember, I think the board contributed addresses of their personal connections.
Or is it that specific? Because I think I echo what he says. I've never seen that. And so when you're saying you have a database, it's people who know people kind of a database?
Exactly.
Or is it based on a zip code?
To my knowledge, we have not mined any other.
So when we did our
address
mailer in the
banks.
fall, part of the issue was, yes, we could spend $10,000 and try and get one in every mailbox in the community. And we tried to narrow that down so that we only spent, was it $2,400 on that mailer? It was about $1,200 on the mailer to a group of of respondents that we thought would be most likely to be interested in the museum.
What are those kind of people? I guess that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand is who are the people that you think that you're going to get the funds from, and how does the database get created?
Sure. So we worked with some marketing folks in the area to whittle down that list to a point. So I think generally it was your retirement age community, those people with time that would like to come down to the museum and donate their time. And then,
Well, I
Is it kind of like the telemarketing where you go and see the timeshare and you write down names of people that you think would be interested, and that's what, like, you have a person who is a member and they write down people that they think might be interested in being a member? Is that?
Not necessarily. I would say most of our internal database is based on people who have been members in the past and then their relatives often. So a lot of our, and that's one thing we're trying to change actually. Our database historically has been very based on like multi-generational families, people who have been farming here in the Selly Valley or down in Sagal for a long time. We do have, I think, more newer contacts in Sandpoint just because of proximity, and like this is where we do most of our events. That is something we've been looking at, is how do we get more programming into Priest Lake, into down in Kokolala, over in Clark Fork, so that we can expand our presence there, because I think if we have that more of a face in those communities, we'll be able to generate more memberships. But most of our internal database is kind of spread throughout the county, but it's really rooted in those people who are passionate about our mission back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, who were these long-term multi-generational families.
I think that's the primary challenge that I see is the demographic of the county has been shifting and is going to continue to shift. And I absolutely love and appreciate the multi-generational families that created this community.
Yeah.
But we have grown so far beyond that. To reach the other demographic, I think, is critical to the future success and continuation of this entity. And one of the other things that I believe is a significant shift is the percent of families who homeschool versus using traditional public school methods. And so while I think continuing to maintain your relationship with the public schools makes sense, I think targeting the homeschool environment, those families, is going to be critical to engaging in the broader county community population. And I think if you can start to identify and target building relationships, especially with the co-op groups for homeschools, because there are, in my estimation, and as a former homeschool family, I can say that what I see is that there are two, generally, I'm going to stereotype it, but two groups of homeschool families. There are those who do everything themselves independently as a family, and then there are those who engage in co-op type environments where they like to utilize a small group and share resources and help one another. And those co-op environments, from what I've observed, they are looking for resources and opportunities to expand the reach and the depth of the information that the kids in that co-op get to access. And so I think they're always looking for new and different resources that they could add into their co-op program. And to me, that's the future in Bonner County of the youth part of the program. And then I think, as again, respecting the history and the multi-generational families that are here, my guess is you've probably saturated that market with the ability to continue to find new donors from that market. It's probably very small. Whereas all of the new folks who have come in from other areas who value and want to understand their new home better, again, I think you have to expand that reach and come up with a new market that you're targeting. Because I think the market that you're currently focused on is just dwindling. And I don't think it's at all sustainable.
I think the politics of Bonner County have made that marketing approach also one that everybody hears the "were you born here" kind of conversation here. And so you're not allowing people that are not born here to participate with anything like historical, let me feel part of something.
Yeah.
Because that is the rhetoric. And I think the other hardship is, it does sound like you're more focused on the Sandpoint area, which creates a little bit of a geographical issue because you have more of the homeschool co-op on the outside of the city limits.
Yeah.
But if the rhetoric is going to continue to be only if you knew somebody who knew somebody who lived here, you're not reaching. And you see it in West Bonner County School District is running the same levy with the same kind of mindset of, but you weren't born here, but you want my money to support it. But you didn't include people in a decision-making. I think that I agree with Commissioner Domke that the idea of, like, even the custom curriculum has its place. But I also would add that there's also, like with Commissioner Cornish saying, people that utilize it need to pay. And it isn't whether or not it's going to float your entire program. That's what keeps your program baseline.
Yeah.
It does keep it baseline. And you
There's
will
value
have,
to it.
and it keeps the interest and the ongoing interest. You don't have a baseline because you're asking the same people who already went to the History Museum, who already lived here for forever. I think, for me, I really want to see, we have to charge for services because the costs are going up for everybody.
Yeah.
And so from a county perspective, we have to look at our costs in our buildings that are failing and how do we justify where we put the money from taxpayers when we're all dealing with the same thing. But in some cases, you guys are actively trying to figure out how to make it work, but we haven't. And you might have more of the data on what you're charging and what you're anticipating in terms of, but it hasn't shifted very much since our last budget talks. But of course, the need has definitely shifted, but what has happened hasn't shifted. But this is, there's a huge opportunity, I think, in marketing in a different way and charging. And that was kind of our takeaways last time was it cannot be for free. It's not sustainable that way for the county to do that. And even with the schools contribute to things like this. There's also value in admissions. I double checked because I thought I remembered being charged a fee for admissions at other local museums and picking something comparable. Seattle is not comparable to this area. Kootenai County is reasonably larger but smaller. They charge $6 admissions.
We did raise our admissions to $6 last fall.
We should be on, when we're needing more from a tax base of people that are not using it, because we kind of self-advertise. We know we're asking more of those that don't use it to pay, that we're ensuring that people that are using it, that are paying for what's reasonable. You guys do a fantastic job of having a tremendous number of volunteers, though. You guys always have a large number of volunteers, which does show the historical desire, but those are the same people usually that have always been there. You're not attracting the new people to come in. And that is, I would like to see the compare contrast from the last budget cycle in line with what you put forward, but also a list of what your prior fees were, what your changes were, and your adjustments. Because for me, I need to see that the decision-making is moving in the direction that is addressing the issue, because I would have hoped to see more of that aspect, because I know I did the same thing to you last time, very detailed on how are we moving forward in this, because it's not, the costs are going to keep going up. And I would also add to the mix of, when you say that you need a roof, I think I would also like to see what are the capital improvement projects that you've identified that are in need, and what are your quotes to repair those. I think that should also be included, because when you're looking at where money should be allocated from, a good portion of this is saying it's just allocated towards salaries. But I'd like to see what, because when it's an emergency to fix something, you aren't capable of fixing it. And I'm gonna guess that the roof is greater than, it's not even listed here as
It's beyond
something.
its serviceable life. Well,
It's
it's
not-
listed in
It's not,
facility repairs and maintenance.
it's not listed here in that this does not have a new roof on your expenses. But all of the money that's coming from income is completely absorbed by the current expenses, which doesn't include a new roof. So it might include patchwork of a roof, but that's not clearly identified here. But I think that that also helps to see what are the needs, and arguably in terms of getting donors to want to contribute, seeing what are those kinds of needs and those costs that you could potentially get people to be donors from. I think I think I'd like to see those two lines.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I concur. I'd love to see a breakdown of how you're accounting for changes in fees as well as the facilities, repairs and maintenance budget items.
Okay.
I'd appreciate if you guys are willing to talk with the board and consider a shift in the marketing strategy to better understand what that looks like, because I really think that's critical.
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Corn's point of, if you're not already identifying how you might be able to utilize more free marketing resources, but also, and I would say, if there's a way to evaluate, again, those homeschool communities, especially those co-op groups, what's the best way to market and reach them? I would really be looking to that, and if I had to invest more in my expense line to do that, I would consider it. And then I know it's small, but in a budget this size, every dollar is important, right? So payment processing fees, is this credit card fees? So most businesses have moved to a model where if you don't pay cash, you have to, as the purchaser, you have to absorb the credit card fee. I think customers have become used to that reality. So I don't think that your business, your organization should be paying for those fees. I think you should pass that on to the customer. If they're not going to be able to pay cash, then I think they should absorb that small fee. Because for them, given what they're paying for the service, that 3 or 4% is extremely small. But obviously, on your budget, it's a significant amount. So I would recommend changing that as a part of your fee schedule as well.
You could push them to a membership. I think there has to be a shift. I think I said this too last time. There needs to be a shift where you guys start charging people for the services that you're rendering. It can't be a completely free museum. And I understand in its inception when you have that burgeoning amount of people that have lived here forever who put it together, but that's not what you have to work with now. And it can't be, as everybody knows, taxpayers and property owners are getting more frustrated with, I have to pay for something that I'm not using or benefiting from. And I'm choosing not to attend it or only attend it if I want to, versus by way of the county sliding tax money there, which means you have used it in some capacity because we are then the pass-through of money. And I'm mindful of that because the community reminds the board as we're coming through budget of where we're putting their money in because we receive it by way of taxes. And I think Commissioner Domke's comments are, I think it's absolutely correct. You can't absorb the cost of running the facility. It's not, there are things that people expect. And I don't think the processing fee is one. When you, would you guys have an option to come back and bring additional information that is inclusive? Because you guys have a lot of programming, but the financial thing is really what you're asking us for. And I think that the programming can be linked to what did you guys change in terms of fee-based. This is the brochure for me to become a member. I'm looking for the $46,000 request, which is how did you shift this from last time? Because I don't see that big shift that includes even if the dollars don't come in, but the change in recognition that people need to pay for the service so that there's a community investment in the historical museum.
So I have a suggestion and a question. So the suggestion, first of all, would be to get aggressive with your marketing, such as Facebook, Telegram, all your social media, because it doesn't cost you anything. If I was looking into the museum or a historical society, I'd be punching those keywords into Facebook, and according to what you've told me, I'm not going to find you. I am not going to type in signed your Sandpoint kid. I am not going to do that. And with my keywords that I do type in aren't even going to get me close to that. So the majority of the people that live in Bonner County now are no longer natives. They've come from somewhere at some point in time.
Yep.
I think it's fair to say that there's probably a few people out there that would love to be involved with this, would love to contribute to it, don't even know about it because you're not reaching them. So an aggressive campaign through Facebook and social media, you guys probably don't have a Facebook page, I'm gonna guess. You do? Then I would suggest putting that on all of the local groups, Sandpoint Online, Sandpoint, my gosh, there's hundreds of them,
We're
right?
asking all the schools to put your museum on their website. There
Start
isn't a reason
promoting
not
it.
to do things like that, to cross.
If I might speak to the social media aspect. So the problem that we face with social media is we're not going to reach the minimum threshold for like monetary feedback.
No,
So we're never going to reach that because we don't have the population base. And so,
I think you're missing the point on that.
no, but what I'm saying is for our message to get out on social media, we actually have to pay for that. So we would have to pay for advertising through Facebook, through YouTube.
No, you don't have to.
You gotta be, so listen, you have to be an out-of-the-box thinker. So why not tag every last one of your elected representatives to advertise you on their site? I have a whole web page where I actually cross-advertise for people on the bottom of it, and I don't charge them anything because it's a one-stop shop. So I understand it's a lot of feedback, but there is benefit to it. You can find them if you put in Bonner County Museum. You guys have opportunity to ask people to help you that it doesn't cost anything. And I think by far money-wise, this might be one of the most fiscally conservative, very difficult to pinch a penny out of boards. But that's why you're getting hit with the ideas of what you could be doing, because it is definitely, it doesn't mean you're going to see a overpouring of money in 1 year. It's that it helps some relevancy there. I've never been attached to or received a request from, will you follow your page? You guys don't actually, you could easily go through every last one of your contacts and say, will you follow my page? My political page does not have a request, so I'm on here to see where are you. You guys haven't asked. And so you could say, Commissioner Williams, District 2, follow our page. Now, I'm going to click follow now that I went here, but that's a way of you guys having volunteers reach out to people to say, help us get our brand out better. And even with what you're doing, we do commissioner reports, each one of us. When you guys are having an event like you're having, or you did on the 3rd, telling the board, this is what's going on at the Historical Museum. And then we could say it on Tuesday mornings. It doesn't cost any money, but you guys haven't asked us to do those things. You are next, you can sit down.
I don't want to interrupt. Oh, you got Mike in here. I'll sit behind him. There you go.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is that,
Now I got really.
so can you reach out to our assistant of when you can gather that information? And then
Yes.
come back for another meeting, because we're looking for the concrete dollar amount. Because a yes or a no on dollars is not just about the programs, but what have you done? And in closing,
In
Clerk
closing.
Rosedale always needs the
So
last
I
word.
do, I need the last word. So
Nothing has
you
changed.
three commissioners all talked about, and I think you agreed the fact that the pool of, the long-standing people in this area is getting smaller and smaller, marketing to that, even marketing to, you were born in Sandpoint or whatever. If maybe with the more people coming in from other places, a marketing campaign could be, I became a part of Sandpoint's history in 2008 when I moved here, or something like that. And then everybody actually can participate in the Sandpoint history, not just look at it from afar.
Because they can't keep doing cars in the 50s, because some of us were.
Honor County history, not Sandpoint history.
Yeah.
And
It's a very distinction.
I think that's a huge, I think though that's a
Very
huge
important
thing
distinction.
because for the people that you can attract, they're not Sandpoint and they're not always wanting to drive to Sandpoint. So you have to give them a reason to drive to Sandpoint for it.
And one
Or
more,
go out.
and I know we're overwhelming you guys with ideas, but
No, I
They just
appreciate
wanted a
it.
blank check.
again,
and they kept-
because we are dealing with growth in a shifting demographic, the other possibility, and I have no idea how they would respond, but it might be worth having a conversation with the local real estate entities to
Yes.
say, would you be willing to help promote us to your customers so that people who are looking to move into and become a part of our county community might have an interest in participating in the Historical Society? And again, that might even be a way to catch new families, both in the public school and the homeschool environments, at the forefront of their endeavor to become a part of Honor County.
Yeah.
So, you might be able to
Yeah.
develop some of these partnerships with folks who are willing to help promote it.
I would say we do have a few realtors we talk to. I think the biggest way we've connected with new residents has been through our property research services. And people have loved coming in to learn about their house that they just bought or their land. So I think the trick is how do we offer that service and then hook them to stay engaged after that?
Yeah, and something like a real estate office, if you find individual offices that are really interested in promoting it, you may only have to give them one copy of a flyer and they'll keep making copies for you,
Oh,
and making them
great.
available and absorb some of that cost that you guys really don't have the budget for.
And let them write it off
So-
as their own tax write-off for making their own flyer. It's all in how you market.
Thank you so
So to
much for the
close,
ideas.
We have a picture of the commissioners from 1927, and their names are all on the back, so.
Jeff Connolly is so here.
I beat you to it.
Actually, right here.
But that's a gift to you all to have in your office.
Not even.
Thank you very
It's-
much.
it's-
Thank
you
you for all the
literally
information and
laughed.
time. Thank you for your
All right,
dedication to it. Thank you.
it is 1:58 and this meeting is adjourned.
I pass this to you.
You betcha. You
Thank
betcha.
you, sir.